Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all learn this truth from and well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. To you I say shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit. And I'm going to entitle this one, The Days Are Being Shortened for the Elect. Because the vibration that is going around the nation of Israel, mainly the men of Great Millstone, starting with our apostles, bishops, elders, brothers on down, is that time is speeding up like never before. Because the last couple of years, time was speeding up, but now in these days that we're in, 2026, it was just 2025. It was just January, 6-7 months ago. But now that prophecy is moving so quickly, the Lord is speeding up the days for his elect's sake, ultimately to deliver them, to get them out of captivity, and to bring the self-proclaimed white man Esau down. Because for the kingdom of heaven to be established upon the planet Earth, this kingdom of Esau Edom has to fall first. And that's what's happening. The downfall of the kingdom of the self-proclaimed white man Esau Edom. So his time of ruling on the planet Earth, causing destruction, havoc, putting hell upon the chosen people of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, the Israelites, which are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, that time is almost up. That's why the days are being sped up. Because us of the hopeful elect, we're praying for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to bring Esau Edom down. We're praying for this kingdom to fall. So what is the Lord doing? He's answering those prayers by speeding up the days, by moving the prophecy, first and foremost, by this word being pushed out and helping seal the elect, but also to let these 2/3 of the nation of Israel, which are prophesied to not make it, to not receive this truth, to not receive salvation, and also to let these heathen nations know what their judgment is going to be, which is ultimately captivity, slavery, Esau Edom, serving hardcore slavery, and then being eradicated off the planet Earth. This is what is knocking at the door. First and foremost, the kingdom of heaven, nation of Israel, and then Esau Edom's kingdom falling. So this is 2nd Ezra chapter 2 and verse 13, and it reads, "Go, and ye shall receive. Pray for a few days unto you, that they may be shortened. The kingdom is already prepared for you. Watch." And that's what us of the hopeful elect are doing. We're constantly praying to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to speed up the days, to bring the downfall of Esau Edom, and ultimately to establish the kingdom of heaven upon the planet Earth. Because the kingdom is already prepared. What did Yahushai said? "In my Father's house, there are already many mansions. I have already prepared a place for you." Meaning Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai has everything already set up through the Spirit. Now it just has to play out in the 3D, in the physical. And that's what's happening, because all the prophecies that are playing out in real time, they were already written before the foundation of the earth. So now they're just playing out in real time in front of everybody's eyes. That's why everybody can feel that time is speeding up, because everybody is ultimately in prophecy, one way, shape, or another. The elect, being in prophecy, getting themselves right, making their calling and election sure by giving diligence. And then you got the 2/3 of our people that are consumed with the folly and the spirit of mirth, don't know what the hell is going on. So they can feel that the days are speeding up too, but in their mindset is, oh man, it's just, I'm getting older. Esau Edom's pseudoscience, how he loves to say, oh man, as you get older, time speeds up because now you're used to the same routine. But no, this is different. Yahweh Bashemel Shai is speeding up the days for his elect's sake, for his remnant's sake. This is Matthew 24 and 22. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And that's what's happening. The days of Esau, Edom ruling upon the planet Earth, the days of the 2/3 of our people walling out, bugging out, crashing out, that's almost up. And ultimately, the establishment of the kingdom of heaven is right around the corner, because if Yahweh Bashemel Shai would allow Esau, Edom to continue to rule, everybody will perish, including Esau, Edom, including himself. You got the movies, Terminator, that show what happens if AI takes over, it goes rogue, it deletes, it pretty much erases humanity as a whole. And that's why Yahweh Bashemel Shai is going to have to stop Esau, Edom. Because he's not fit to rule. The earth is mourning. The people are mourning, sighing and crying. Well, the only ones who are sighing and crying for righteousness to be established upon the planet Earth and for wickedness to be purged out are the elect, the remnant, like it says in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 9 and verse 4. And that's why the elect and the remnant are going to have that mark of exemption, that tawah, that's going to make them exempt from all this judgment that is about to come upon the planet Earth. Jacob's trouble, Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1, a time like no other. That's why the Lord is only going to speed up the days more and more, especially after Esau implements the mark of the beast, which is the RFID micro seal. That's when the Lord is really going to speed up these times to a whole nother level. So yeah, it may seem like the days are being shortened, but it's only going to ramp up more and more for the elect's sake. And what are the elect doing in these last days? They're redeeming the times. They're making the best out of the few days, few months, however much long we had here in captivity, and getting themselves right with Yahweh Bashemel Shai during this grace period. Building themselves up, growing closer to Yahweh Bashemel Shai, building up that relationship during this mercy period, because like the scripture says, I must work the works of him while it is day, while the mercy period is still going on, because the time of mercy, the time of grace, it's almost up. The famine of the word is here. You got Canada that just passed that bill that is going to come into effect in a couple days, because Yahweh Bashemel Shai is wrapping up this Edomite kingdom, and he's about to establish the kingdom of heaven up on the planet Earth. This is Isaiah 51 and verse 14, and it reads, "The captive exile hasteth that he may be loosed, and that he should not die in the pit, nor that his breath should fail." So who are the ones who acknowledge that they're in captivity, that they were not free, were not slavery? It's the elect, the remnant, those who are calling upon Yahweh Bashemel Shai. Those who aren't looking to continue here and establish themselves for eternity, like the 2/3 of our people that are following after the vibration of Esau, Edom. That's Psalms 49 and 11, or 43 and 11. Their inward thoughts is their houses shall continue forever. This is the mindset of the 2/3 of our people. That's why, even though the days are speeding up, majority of our people, they don't look at this spiritually. They don't look at it as prophecy playing out, because they're not measuring the times diligently. So ultimately, the only ones who are going to be delivered and be covered are going to be the remnant, the elect, the hopeful elect, because they know that they're in captivity. They know that they're sick, that they need healing from Yahweh Shai. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to come and break out of prison his elect, his remnant, his brothers, his sisters. This is the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 8 and verse 1, and it reads, "And he answered me, saying, the Most High had made this world for many, but the one to come for few." So that's why these people in this world, they're so caught up in his life. You know, they're consumed with the cares of the world, with the affairs of this life, the distractions, the bread and circus, you know, keeping their boo thing happy, so on and so forth, trying to be a family guy, family man, you know, trying to save up to send their kids to college, you know, saving up for their tuition, because they have that mindset that, oh man, you know, we're here for the long run. You know, Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, he's allowing us to vote, he's allowing us to go to college, to have a job, you know, to have social media. So the mindset of our people is, oh man, this place is going to continue forever. So this is why they're so invested in America, Babylon the Great, and this beast system. But the world to come, which is the kingdom of heaven, that's going to be first and foremost for the first fruits, for the elect, the 144,000, like it says in the book of Revelation chapter 14. Those who know the new song, you know, the testimony of Yahushai, which is the spirit of prophecy. Those are the ones that are going to be ruling in the world to come, because they put off this world. They said, man, to hell with this. If this world's going to pass away, then why should I be so invested to the point where I break my neck? You know, where I lose my mind and bug out trying to get rich in this world, you know, trying to get the bag, like majority of our people are doing. You know, but what does the book of Haggai chapter 1 say? You know, even though you work so much, you bring in so little. You know, you work so hard, but you know, you don't have nothing to drink. Because what does it say in the book of Baruch 3 and 8? We are subject to payment. So we're not here to build a kingdom inside of another kingdom. No, we're here to prophesy the destruction of this kingdom, the downfall of this kingdom of Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man's kingdom, and ushering the second coming of who everybody ignorantly calls Christ, which is real name is Yahushai, and letting the world know that he's coming to bring great judgment, that he's coming to, you know, like it says, the blood is going to reach, you know, to his garment. That's how much destruction and death Yahweh Bashim Shai is about to bring upon the planet Earth. You know? So I'm going to read it again, 2nd Ezra chapter 8 and verse 1. And it reads, "And he answered me, saying, the Most High had made this world for many, but the world to come for few." Yeah, and that's going to be the first fruits that are going to be joint heirs with Yahushai, the 144,000. The rest of the 1/3, the innumerable number, they're going to be joint heirs with Yahushai, having dominion over the planet Earth. You know, each member getting his allotted lot, you know, whatever it may be, you know, a city, 2 cities. And then Yahushai said, I already prepared many mansions for you in my Father's house, going into the heavens, you know, exploring the galaxies, the different planets, different solar systems. That's already set up for the remnant and the elect. But for these people that are so caught up in this world, they have been blinded by Yahweh Bashim Shai. They're in that gross darkness. They believe that this is the end all be all. That's why they're going so hard, because this is their only hope. You know, they don't have that hope in the kingdom of heaven that us, that the hopeful elect, have. This is Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 15. And it reads, "See then that ye walk circumspectly, looking around, being aware of the times, not as fools, but as wise." Yeah, redeeming the time, like it says in the next verse, making the best out of the little amount of time we have left. You know, because before we came into this truth, into the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, before we received the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, you know, we were bustling and hustling to try to get set up in this world, trying to get the bag, trying to build generational wealth. But what did that lead us to? To nothing, because Yahweh Bashim Shai put us under the curses. Yeah, he's lifting the curses upon us slowly, and they're transferring over to the enemy, to the heathens, like it says in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 30. But those curses aren't going to be lifted off of us till we get changed to the new bodies with the law, statutes, commandments written in our inward parts, like it says in the book of Jeremiah 31, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. I'm going to read it again, Ephesians 5 and 15. See that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Verse 16, redeeming the time because the days are evil. And what is that word redeem? Going into buying back. And what are we buying back? The time that we have left, making the best out of these couple, however long we have left in captivity, which we know that we don't have long, but ultimately the elect and the remnant are going to be doing the work. The prophets pushing this word out, prophesying the destruction of this kingdom, prophesying the establishment of the kingdom of heaven. And then you got the believers taking heed to the warning, getting themselves right, cleansing themselves to the best of their ability, putting off that old man, because the days are evil. It's very wicked and evil times that we're in. People think that it's bad right now, but man, it's about to get really bad out here. You got the Strait of Hormuz situation, which is going to lead to famine. It's going to lead to, you already got pestilences over here. You got, the Lone Star tick. You got the VIRUS. You got explosive diarrhea going on. You got a paralyzing mosquito going. You got all types of plagues that Yahweh Bashim Shai is sending upon the planet Earth. Because why? He's about to destroy America, Babylon the Great, by the way of thermonuclear destruction, and he's going to bring great judgment, great calamity upon the inhabitants of the earth. And the only ones who are going to be safe and be kept, like it says in the book of Psalms 91, is going to be the remnant, the elect. It says, verse 17, Ephesians 5 and 17, wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. And what's the will of the Lord? To destroy this kingdom, to bring this kingdom down, and to establish the kingdom of heaven upon the planet earth, to put his people, the Israelites, in a rulership position, starting with Yahweh Shai, the 144,000, and the 1/3, their innumerable number. And then eventually you are going to have the 2/3 of the nation of Israel, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are the true Israelites, that are going to be brought back to the loins of the elect. This is Isaiah 60 and verse 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon me. Yeah, because we were pulled out of that gross darkness by the grace of Yahweh Bashim Shai, being engulfed in a world, thinking that it's going to continue, that it's never going to be brought down. Being in the mindset of these 2/3 and an Esau, Edom's mindset. That oh man, it's just going to continue on forever. Even though we're in so-called Generation Z, the last generation, there's going to be another generation after that, worse than YNs and Pookie and Ray, Hector and Edgar and Esau, Edom just bugging out even more. No, we're at the end of the kingdom of Esau, Edom. And we're letting our people know that. But the only ones who are going to take heed and ultimately repent are going to be the elect. It says verse 2, for behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and great and gross darkness the people. But the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. Yeah, because right now you can see it in the people's faces. You can read their spirit. They're putting up a front, a fake ass smile, faking a funk, faking that they're really happy and really enjoying themselves. How are you enjoying yourself when you're subject to payments, constantly taxed to death, breathing air, polluted air with chemtrails, eating GMO foods, drinking water full of plastic and metals and fluoride and lead? How is that living? This isn't living. But what's going to be true living is going to be in the kingdom of heaven, where Yahweh Bashim Shai is going to set the world in order. But these people don't see that. They don't see that the earth needs new management, that it needs a proper rulership. The only ones who see that is the elect and the remnant. And that's why Yahweh Bashim Shai is speeding up the days, because he's about to bring this kingdom down, because he's hearing a sign and crying of his elect, his remnant. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 10 in the NLT. And it reads, "Don't long for the good old days. That is not wise." And that's what these 2/3 are doing. You know, they want to go back to pre-2020, pre-2000. Oh, they want to go back to $1.50 gas, $500 rent. You get all 2 carts full of groceries with $100. Those days are gone. And us, so the hopeful elect, we know that for us to get the hell up out of here, things have to get worse. And Babylon the Great, America's fallen, but we're in this, in this kingdom. And we're gonna feel, we're feeling the effects of the downfall of this kingdom, inflation. The dollar is has less of a purchasing power. Why? Because Yahweh Bashim Shai is bringing his kingdom down. So we don't long for the good old days. The good old days are gone. The only ones who are, reminiscing, nostalgia, is these 2/3. The hell with nostalgia and looking back. And what happened to Lot's wife? She looked back. That's what these 2/3 are doing, and that's why they're going to get destroyed. This is the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3 and verse 1. It says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." And what is the time that we're in? The season is the season of Yahweh Bashim Shai visiting the earth, because the Lord is, making it evident that he's about to bring this place down, because, man, these places are ramping up more and more. Earthquakes in diverse places, people, hearts waxing cold, iniquity abounding, because it has to get worse before it has to get better. It says, verse 2, "A time to be born and a time to pluck up." Or a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. And what are we planting? We're planting, that mustard seed. Because what Yahweh Shai said, even though the mustard seed is the smallest of all the seeds, eventually, through time and faith, trial and tribulation, that mustard seed is going to grow to that big, that big tree. It says, verse 3, "A time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up." And what are we doing? We're building ourselves up, being edified through the Spirit. It says, verse 4, "A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance." Verse 6, "A time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away." Verse 7, "A time to rend and a time to sue, a time to keep silence and a time to speak." And right now we're speaking the words of Yahweh Bashim Shai, that is possible through the Holy Spirit, letting our people know that this kingdom is wrapping up. It says, verse 8, "A time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." And right now we are not in a time of peace. We're in a time of war. But the only ones who are in that spiritual war, fighting the flesh, the spirit, versus the spirit versus the flesh, is the hopeful elect, the remnant. Get this last one. This is Romans 13 and verse 11. "And that, knowing a time, that now it is high time to wake up out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believe." So the salvation of the elect, the 144,000, is right around the corner. You know, Yahweh Bashim Shai is wrapping this thing up. That's why he's speeding up the days. You know, you got months that feel like weeks, weeks that feel like days, days that feel like hours, because Yahweh Bashim Shai is about to bring Esau, Edom's kingdom down and establish the kingdom of heaven up on the planet Earth. But that's pretty much the point. I pray that this was edifying unto the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all learn this truth from and will do well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. And to you I say Shalom.